Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another installment of our Advisicon webinar series. The bottom line question for any organization is, how can we do more with less? One way might be to leverage the power of automation and AI as a tool to reduce the time to reach your solution, and that might come in the form of a workflow. This webinar will aim to get you quickly oriented with Copilot in Power Automate. Here at Advisicon, we help organizations achieve greater impact by leveraging work management technologies to accomplish more with less. As work management consultants and technology specialists, our focus is on streamlining processes, improving systems, and achieving better outcomes. Looking at today's agenda, we'll walk through the benefits of a cloud flow. Maybe you've never even heard of a cloud flow. I'll break that down for you today. Then we'll talk about writing a good Copilot prompt. As AI, Copilot needs some good inputs to create good outputs. We'll give you some best practices on how to do that. Maybe you have never even heard about Copilot. We'll break that down as well. I'll also walk through some use cases on how you might start using Copilot in Power Automate to create your own workflows today. And lastly, we'll bring it all together in a nice, neat summary. A little bit about myself. My name is Sean. I have a background in math education, experience in implementing 365 as solutions for our customers. I have over a decade's worth of experience with delivering instruction and training. I am a PMP. I'm also an MCP, Microsoft Certified Professional in Teams. And I'm a semi-professional, self-proclaimed dad joke teller. Here's one for you today, and it's brought to you by our friends at AI. This is generated by artificial intelligence. It says, why did the AI cross the road? Because it was programmed by a chicken. All right, let's talk about the benefits of a cloud flow. So if you've never heard of a cloud flow, here's really the formula that creates the flow. Starting from the left, you have a trigger. There are three types of triggers using Power Automate. It can be an event. For example, an action happens, such as when an email arrives. It could also be a timed trigger. At 5:30 a.m. every day, do this action. And the third type of trigger is a button trigger, where you, as the user, manually say, run this flow. Moving on with the flow, you have a trigger, which then starts a cascade of actions. For example, you can create something, you can send something, you can update something. And really, as long as those actions follow in a logical sequence from the trigger, the actions will cascade down to the end of its entirety, which creates really the flow. And I define the flow as an automated sequence of actions. Let's look at the benefits of a cloud flow. When you line out a trigger plus an action, you are really defining a process. And really, I'll elaborate more on that as we go. But defining your process helps create all these benefits you see on screen. There's improved efficiency. What was once manual and repetitive now becomes, as the word says, automated. You can send a notification at a certain time. You can update a database based on a certain action. Second benefit is accuracy. There is sometimes a human error involved when processes involve humans, as many projects do. So to decrease this error, you can use automation to point to the exact fields you're looking for, the exact sheets or the exact Word documents that you're looking for, so that you can create accurate reports. You can also create targeted communications. As project managers, you want to target communications to specific stakeholders. That's one way to improve accuracy, keeping your stakeholders happy as you deliver this project. A third Cloudflow benefit would be, of course, the savings. When you have improved efficiency, improved accuracy, you have less waste, which translates to savings in cost of your project. What used to take perhaps 10 minutes even to generate a communication chain will now just take 1 minute with the click of a run button, a trigger to start your flow. That can reduce the time to close administrative tasks. This also allows your organization to scale as it grows. All right, let's talk about writing a good Copilot prompt. And first, we'll start off with what is Copilot? Microsoft has unveiled Copilot, and on screen, it has explained Copilot in this way. It's an orchestration engine that utilizes three core components: apps, which you see on the left, graph, which you see on the bottom left, and then on the right, large language model. So again, three components, and Microsoft Copilot is orchestrating how they interact. In the words of Microsoft, your words now become the productivity tool as you instruct Copilot with a trigger and an action. When this happens, I want this next sequence of actions to happen. Copilot is also said to be your AI assistant. It doesn't replace your work, rather it accelerates it so that you can know more about the possibilities with Copilot and really with any 365 app. There are 365 apps mentioned on screen, which are more of the Office suite of apps, but Copilot does tie in with the Power Platform domain of 365. And that's where we'll be looking at today. Power Automate sits within the Power Platform. And really, if you're not yet familiar with Power Automate, this is what drives all the Microsoft 365 connectors, such as notifications. One of my favorite notifications is that when a user gets an assignment in Planner, they receive an email to let them know that they have an assignment. That's all generated with Power Automate. So there are pre-built flows. You also have the ability to create custom flows with Copilot. Now, you can even create it from a template, which you see on the left there. There are templates, which are best practices, most frequently used flows. You can also create them from scratch. Or, as we're going to demonstrate today, you can create them with the help of Copilot. Maybe you're not familiar with all the different types of triggers, with all the different types of actions. Copilot can create a flow for you, just again, based on your words, just on natural language. I will say this Copilot, as it stands at the time of this recording, best works in English language right now. But if you can define a trigger plus the action, that creates your flow. So how do we start writing with Copilot? Well, let's take a step back and talk about writing in general. You see the quote on screen, "There's no good writing, only great rewriting." This points to the process of writing, that it's rarely a one-time got it right first shot. There usually is a first draft, second draft, third draft. One great writer said, on a normal day, I'll do 5 rewrites, but when I'm feeling particularly inspired, I'll do 4 rewrites. So even great writers take time to write. Same with Copilot. I want to encourage you ahead of time that there's going to be times to rewrite, and the thing is, Copilot will just work with you as you change the prompts. All right, now let's talk about some best practices. First of all, Copilot works best in a when and then type of formula. When can be thought of as your trigger. Then refers to the actions that happen. So when X, then Y. We'll do some use case scenarios, but just know the formula, when and then. Secondly, as mentioned before, to at length, review and rewrite. Copilot will generate a flow for you, guessing and thinking, is this what you're looking for? Well, review the suggestion, and then you can rewrite. Third, be specific with inputs and outputs. I'll demonstrate that, but the more specifics you can give the flow, the better output you're going to have. And fourthly, reference the app that you want it to use. Don't just say, write it. You say, write it in Word, for example. Don't just say, pull items from somewhere. Say, say it's going to be in Excel. All right, now we understand more about what is Copilot, how to use it, the benefits of it. Let's actually dive into some possible use cases. All right, in the project management flow of processes, let's talk about intake. Maybe your organization, the way you work, says we're going to gather requirements from emails. I want to add to our requirements backlog from incoming emails. So as a first draft of writing, one might just say, when I get an email, add it to a list. Now you're definitely going to get suggestions. Or let's try a rewrite to be more specific and to mention the app. The rewrite says, when I receive an email with the word requirement in the subject line, look how specific that is. Then add it to a task to my planner board. There's mentioning the app. So it's a very specific start, very specific location, very specific end place. Notice what type of trigger are we using here? We're using an event trigger. When I receive an email, that's the event. So on the right, you'll get a suggested flow. It'll show you the trigger. It'll show you the actions. Notice at the bottom, it even gives you the option to show a different suggestion. Again, Copilot says, is this what you're looking for? Maybe you're looking something like this. It's your AI assistant. Here is what Copilot has generated in Power Automate. First of all, on the right, you can see that Copilot is still with you. It's still able to answer questions or make changes to the flow. So Copilot sits with you even as you work with your flow. Now, as I've practiced it at the time of this recording, it's still in the early stages and has room for growth in manipulating, changing the flow. The biggest lift that Copilot has given, as I see right now, is to create the framework of the cards. For example, many things I would not have known existed or thought to use. The Copilot generates the flow in a way that I would never have thought. So good suggestions, again, to create your framework. Moving over to the left, you can see some details of how the card can be manipulated, how you can point to certain data points. Remember, one of my desires was that the subject line would contain the word requirement. And look, it did it for me. Copilot generated that all on its own. One thing I want to add that, and I'll keep reiterating this point, that creating a flow actually has another hidden benefit, and that's defining your process. We've defined how we're going to work. When an email comes in with requirement in the subject line, then I want these actions to happen. How streamlined, how efficient, accurate, and think of the potential time savings as well as monetary savings. Next use case, let's talk about auditing. You know, that's one of those manual, laborious tasks that we could use laborious tasks, or we could utilize AI and automation. The use case says, I want to generate a list of all the updates done. All right, so let's get more specific. Let's put some details down on paper. A first draft says, at 5:30 a.m., write all the updates to an Excel spreadsheet into a Word document. Okay, so that's a good start. We have a time trigger there, right? 5:30 a.m. When 5:30? But which 5:30 a.m.? There's 24 5:30 a.m.s every day. Let's talk about a rewrite. Which 5:30 a.m. are we looking for? Which time zone? So let's specify the time zone there in the rewrite as 5:30 a.m. Eastern. And which days? Do we want this to happen even on weekends? Well, let's just focus on weekdays. So every weekday at 5:30 a.m. Eastern, write all the updates. Okay, on the right is where you see Copilot has generated a flow for us. Notice the time trigger and the actions that follow. Here is the output of that flow. Notice that there are some areas that say invalid parameters. Those need to still be defined as you work with flow. But improvement comes in that the date and time has been written for me automatically. That was a challenge for me when I first started using Power Automate, but it is already created for you. And I love that I have an assurance of the exact times and dates, because there's a preview feature on the bottom there to assure me that this will run exactly as asked. So to reiterate the point of process, we have a defined Excel sheet. And yes, you will need to tell the flow which Excel sheet. Also, Excel is looking for a table in that worksheet. So you need to define the table as well. And then lastly, define the output of which Microsoft Word, notice it says their template, you want to write to. All right, our third use case, with any project, one of the most important features you can do between the project team and stakeholders is communicate, communicate, and then communicate. Here's the example. Using an instant flow, send an email to Scott, David, Walter, and AJ. Then post a Teams message to Crystal, then assign a task to Alina. Notice how our project team is vast and we have many people to communicate with. Well, let's put that into Copilot in Power Automate. And on the right is the suggested flow. Notice the trigger starts up at the top, and then the actions below have multiple steps. Let's dive deeper into it. First of all, we talked about time triggers and event triggers. Notice here you see a run trigger on the left. The user does need to come into Power Automate and click run to start this flow. But when you're working in real time and the event can't be necessarily synchronized, or the trigger for the flow cannot necessarily synchronize between for a time or an event, the run is the next best option. On the right, you'll see how Power Automate has created the flow. This flow is simple, done in series. I would have preferred it to create parallel flows because especially if you don't need a predecessor-successor relationship between the cards, let them run in parallel. As I tried to manipulate this, that was one area of growth that Copilot could still have, is to now change the flow from series to parallel. Again, to belabor the point about process, my process gets defined, and with a complex team of cross-functional team members, that's really important because I need to be able to communicate accurately to the right people, efficiently. As soon as I'm done, I can do a handoff, and an assignment is created for the next person. So things are moving along as quickly as the team moves, not waiting for the next meeting or the next morning. All right, so to bring it back in summary, we've talked about the benefits of cloud flows. We've also talked about how to use Copilot and how to work with Copilot. Remember, the best practices are when and then statements. Don't be afraid to rewrite. Try to be as specific as possible, and then also mention the app. When it comes to any use case, what Power Automate and this practice of using Copilot to generate your Power Automate flows will define your processes from start to end. Reduced ambiguity leads to improved efficiency and accuracy as well. And then there's no, again, wasted time on trying to figure out what do I do next? Your process is defined. Thank you for watching this webinar. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, like or follow us on our social media platforms, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We offer many free trainings in our online academy. You can access those by visiting advisicon.thinkific.com. For project managers, simply become a member of Advisicon Academy to receive the code to redeem PDUs. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time.